was just 26 years old when she became a victim of the Manson family murders. But she was so much more than that. She was an actress, wife, soon-to-be mother, daughter, and friend. A natural beauty, she was kind and warm-hearted, according to those who knew her well. She was living her best life when it was abruptly cut short. But we're here to also talk about what she brought to those years she lived. When Sharon Tate married director Roman Polanski in a stylish, star-studded ceremony, it was like a Hollywood fairy tale. But the famous couple hid a dark secret behind their bedroom doors. Stay tuned for more on that later. Sharon Tate was born to Colonel Paul James Tate and Doris Tate in Dallas, Texas in 1943. Her father was an officer in the U.S. Army, and the family moved around a lot when she was a child. In fact, by the time she was 16 years old, Tate had lived in 6 different cities throughout her life, and had enrolled in several different high schools. Though her family described the young Tate as shy and noted her difficulty creating or maintaining friendships, she was a whole different person when she went on stage. When she was just 6 months old, Tate not only participated in, but won the Miss Tiny Talk of Dallas pageant, showing a glimmer of the stardom that was to come. Even though she was a somewhat reserved girl, lacking in self-confidence, Sharon Tate's beauty became undeniable as she grew into a young woman. This confidence boost urged her on, and she began entering into adult beauty pageants. She actually won 5 different beauty pageants in 1959 alone, which is a rate of 1 win almost every 2 months. By 1960, Tate's army brat lifestyle led the family to Verona, Italy. It was there that Tate discovered something almost unbelievable. She had become a kind of a local celebrity. Residents and fellow army children had seen a photograph of her on the front cover of the military magazine Stars and Stripes, and her beauty blew them away. At her American high school in Italy, Tate finally began to make lasting friendships. Everyone there felt just as displaced and as lonely as her, and the classmates bonded with each other. Tate was a model student throughout high school. She played on the basketball team. She was a cheerleader and baton twirler, served on student council, starred as Juliet in the school's rendition of Romeo and Juliet, and no surprise here, her peers elected her homecoming queen and senior prom queen. She absolutely did it all. When she was younger and even into childhood, Tate's reserve and lack of self-confidence could come across as snobbiness or aloofness, but once people got to know her, she opened up and became warm and gentle. In 1961, Tate graduated from the high school after just a year of attending it, but the experience helped her become more self-confident for the rest of her life. In fact, it was her time at this high school that helped her break into acting. While in Italy, she and her newfound friends discovered that a movie named Hemingway's Adventures of a Young Man was filming on location nearby. It starred the likes of Richard Beymer, Paul Newman, and Susan Strasberg, and the girls desperately sought and won parts as extras on the movie. The bit part also led to a steamy development in her love life. While on set, Tate caught the attention of Richard Beymer. The dashing actor spotted her in the sea of extras, went over, and introduced himself. They quickly became a couple and dated throughout the shoot. Perhaps more importantly, Beymer suggested that Tate seriously look into a career in acting. Despite all of the recognition of her beauty and the men falling all over themselves to be with her, Tate didn't see herself as beautiful. "Sexiness is all in the eye of the beholder," she once said. "I think it should be, absolutely. My appeal, whatever it might be, isn't obvious, at least to me." After her positive experience filming with Hemingway's Adventures of a Young Man, Tate began to pursue acting. Despite her unearthly beauty, her dream turned into a long grind over the next year. She worked as an extra in a string of films, tried to break in through failed screen tests, and even went back to America to try to get roles, all to no avail. Then Tate's dreams came to a shocking halt. Her mother Doris worried constantly over her daughter's safety all the way across the Atlantic Ocean, and she eventually suffered a nervous breakdown a few months after Tate went to the USA. Guilt-stricken, Tate returned to Italy to take care of her mother and ease her worries. In 1962, however, Tate finally began to break into Hollywood. The family returned stateside, and Tate made the move to Los Angeles, where she immediately locked down small parts in big 60s hits like the Beverly Hillbillies and Mr. Ed. She was even up for the part of Billy Joe Bradley in Petticoat Junction, but heartbreakingly, her youthful lack of self-confidence came back to haunt her, as it would for the rest of her career. Her agent, Martin Ranzelhoff, thought Tate lacked the self-esteem for the part, and the role slipped through her fingers. In fact, Ranzelhoff was quite controlling. He often refused to give her larger parts in productions, including big-name projects like The Cincinnati Kid with Steve McQueen, because he felt she was too timid and not up to the task. As Tate once said, Mr. Ranzelhoff didn't want the audience to see me till I was ready. In the end, though, not even Ranzelhoff could hide her star power. And in 1965, he finally gave her the lead role in the occult thriller Eye of the Devil. Tate had waited a long time for this break, and she wasn't about to mess it up. She even traveled to London to do research and meet with the Wiccan high priest and priestess. For all her gumption and initiative, there were still some Sharon Tate doubters, including the director of Eye of the Devil himself. Director J. Lee Thompson said that he even set up an exit strategy for firing the actress. As he said, "We even agreed that if after the first 2 weeks Sharon was not quite making it, we would put her back in cold storage." Lucky for him, he was dead wrong. Thompson admitted that as soon as he saw Tate act, he found her tremendously exciting. As Tate's star rose, so did her romance profile. She began a passionate relationship with dashing French actor Philippe Fouquet in 1963 and became his fiancée in a matter of months. Their deep love, however, was also incredibly volatile. They fought almost constantly and struggled under the pressures of their careers. By 1964, they had split. Just after her breakup with Fouquet, Tate met Jay Sebring, a sailor turned hairstylist to the stars. The two briefly dated, but Sebring was more enthralled with Tate than she was with him. When he proposed to her, she took the lessons she'd learned with Fouquet and said no, stating she wanted to focus on her career. In the late 60s, Tate met her future husband, director Roman Polanski. Soon after, Tate began lobbying for a role in Polanski's film The Fairless Vampire Killers. But both Tate and Polanski admitted that it was far from love at first sight. For his part, Polanski was a hardened perfectionist who felt that Tate was too naive and innocent, criticisms she had surely heard before. Polanski initially wanted the red-headed actress Jill St. John for the lead role in The Fairless Vampire Killers. After meeting with Tate, however, he changed his mind, provided she wore a red wig throughout filming. After filming started, Tate did what she always did. She proved her worth. Soon enough, Polanski was praising her performances, and before they knew what was happening, the young star and her director were in love. It was fast and all-consuming. By the end of filming, Tate had even moved into Polanski's London apartment. Tate and Polanski's budding relationship, however, didn't mean the notoriously prickly director went easy on the starlet. In fact, he was so dissatisfied with the way one particular scene was turning out that he had Tate perform and redo the dialogue and acting a whopping 70 times. Tate often had a dark sense of humor about some of her racier film roles. In Don't Make Waves, a movie she was particularly disappointed in, her character parades around in a bikini throughout almost the entire film. This costume choice led Tate to refer to herself and her persona rather bitterly as sexy little me. After Don't Make Waves flopped, she confessed to a reporter quite boldly, "It's a terrible movie." Tate was remarkably clear-eyed about her position in the Hollywood ecosystem. When asked about her acting dreams, she replied, "I don't fool myself. I can't see myself doing Shakespeare." Instead, she aspired to be more of a comedic actress in the mold of the great Carole Lombard, and she sought out comedy films for that purpose. Despite these comic ambitions, Tate also admired classic Hollywood actresses, particularly Faye Dunaway and Catherine Deneuve. Speaking of Deneuve, she said, "I'd like to be an American Catherine Deneuve. She plays beautiful, sensitive, deep parts with a little bit of intelligence behind them. What's most tragic is she never got the chance." Roman Polanski wanted Tate to be the star of his now classic film Rosemary's Baby, which he directed and wrote. However, he felt their relationship made it impossible for him to suggest her for the part, and he kept waiting for someone else to bring her name up. That never happened, and the iconic role famously went to Mia Farrow instead. Even with yet another star-making role ripped from her grasp, Tate didn't recede into the shadows. In fact, she consulted for and even created some of the most memorable scenes in Rosemary's Baby, including the way Farrow's character gets impregnated in the movie. Tate had a near-death experience while filming Don't Make Waves. She was wearing a parachute during a stunt that saw her jump from a plane into a pool, but terrifyingly, the parachute deployed at the wrong time. She ended up in the pool trapped inside the ballooning parachute, but luckily got out before she drowned. One person who reportedly wouldn't work with Tate? Elizabeth Taylor. Tate was set to have a small walk-on role in the film The Sandpiper, but the legendarily jealous Taylor put the kibosh on that quickly. Rumor has it that Taylor wasn't a fan of having a pretty young actress on set, even if Tate was only in a small role. Considering the high-profile actors Tate starred alongside, a few of the films she made were not largely well received. Her specific role in Eye of the Devil had mixed reviews, while the film itself was a failure. Critics also considered The Wrecking Crew a commercial letdown, and even Valley of the Dolls drew a lot of negative reviews. Despite some failures, which can happen to the best of actors, Tate also found some successes. She garnered herself a Golden Globe nomination for Valley of the Dolls, though she ultimately didn't win for a new Star of the Year in the actress category. Still, it was a big boost, and her career was set to skyrocket. On January 20th, 1968, Sharon Tate married Roman Polanski, just days before her 25th birthday. Polanski was very encouraging of Tate's film career, and even sometimes too encouraging. She perhaps rightly felt she should sever her ties with her agent, Martin Ranzelhoff. But when Tate started turning more to domestic pursuits rather than Hollywood, he snapped that he wanted to be married to a hippie, not a housewife. Many since noted the controlling behavior Polanski exerted on all aspects of Tate's life. Nonetheless, Tate followed this lead and soon immersed herself in the Hollywood set of Bright Young Things, her husband Polanski in tow. Their social circle contained the likes of Mia Farrow, Peter Fonda, and Dora's frontman Jim Morrison, and their home was often full of people, sometimes strangers, going in and out at all hours of the day. Tate was content and admitted she liked participating in the free spirit of the era. Director Quentin Tarantino's ninth and newest film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, provides a snapshot of Sharon Tate's life in Hollywood in the late 1960s, albeit through an alternate timeline that reimagines Tate's last days. In the film, Tate is played by Margot Robbie. In 1969, Polanski and a very pregnant Tate moved into 150 Cielo Drive. It was a mansion fit for Hollywood's best and brightest. Nestled deep in Benedict Canyon, the house used to belong to the couple's friends Terry Melcher and actress Candice Bergen. Tate was reportedly over the moon about the move and referred to the home as her love house. Previously, it was the house she would die in. Tate's old flame, Jay Sebring, was apparently heartbroken to hear that Tate and Polanski had gotten together on the set of The Fearless Vampire Killers. However, he soon got over the loss and ended up becoming lifelong friends with Tate. He even ended up quite close with Polanski as well. Sadly, Sebring was with Tate on that fateful day. Tate's life took a sad, cruel twist when the Manson family burst into her home and unalived her, along with Abigail Falger, Wojtek Fokowski, Steve Parent, and her dear friend Jay Sebring. The infamous crime took place on the night of August 9, 1969, in Tate's Cielo Drive home, while she was entertaining friends. It was a tragedy that shook the nation, not to mention Polanski, who was abroad at the time. Unfortunately, Manson chose the Cielo Drive house because of a grudge he had against its previous tenant, Terry Melcher, not Sharon Tate. Manson had been trying to convince Melcher to give him a record deal, but Melcher refused. Though Manson was likely aware that Melcher no longer lived in the house, it still gave him an appropriate target. Charles Manson and his deranged followers with the Manson family were charged and convicted of Tate's murder, along with those of her guests that terrible night. At the time of the now infamous trial, the death penalty was still practiced in California. Accordingly, the judge sentenced all the criminals to death in 1971. Just the following year, though, the state abolished the death penalty, which meant the court commuted the death sentences to life in prison for the 7 people convicted of the crimes. One of the 7 died in prison in 2009, and Manson himself died in prison in November 2017. The rest remain in jail, despite multiple attempts at parole requests. During the parole hearings for the murderers, Tate's father always campaigned against those convicted, even once saying of Manson, "That man should never, never, never be turned out into society." He even made sure to write letters to the officials involved in the parole cases, going as far as to detail how he had to clean up his daughter's crime scene himself. 1005D Cielo Drive no longer exists. It was demolished in 1994. In fact, you can't even find it anywhere on a map. The street address was completely changed after developers built a new house on the land. Yet the property's bloody reputation still stands. And the new mansion has been incredibly difficult to sell in recent years. Just weeks before her death, Tate was with her family watching Neil Armstrong walk on the moon, making it one of the last times they would all spend time together. Tate's mother, Doris, brought her daughter a gift that day, a wooden rocking chair for the upcoming baby that she herself had used when bringing up Sharon and her sisters. Tate's tombstone reflects both herself and her unborn son. She wanted to name him after her father, Paul Richard Polanski, and her name sits above his on the grave. At the time of her death, she was already 8.5 months pregnant. Not only did Tate's father clean up the crime scene after his daughter's death, he also tried to find the culprits behind the murders. Because of his more than 2 decades of work with U.S. Army intelligence, he was well equipped to go after leads into the case while going undercover as a hippie. So a prosecutor said his leads never really panned out. Sharon Tate's work in the Valley of Dolls has since become a cult classic. But her time on set was an absolute nightmare. It was a disaster from the start, as Tate admitted to Polanski that she wasn't a fan either of the original Valley of the Dolls book or the film script. But that was just the beginning of the troubles. Tate initially starred alongside Patty Duke, Barbara Parkins, and the film legend Julie Garland. But the production soon dismissed Garland from the project and replaced her with Susan Hayward. Furthermore, director Mark Robson was highly critical of all his leading ladies, but he was particularly cruel with Tate. Duke later admitted that Robson continually treated Tate like an imbecile, which he definitely was not. Although Tate hoped marrying Polanski would help settle them down as a couple, they hid some bedroom secrets. It was far from a faithful marriage. Polanski had an unapologetically wandering eye and called Tate's discomfort with his infidelity Sharon's big hang-up. For her part, Tate was said to have confided in her friends bitterly, saying, "We have a good arrangement. Roman lies to me, and I pretend to believe him." Whatever their issues, when Polanski heard about the death of his beloved wife, he was utterly inconsolable. He rushed home to mourn her and soon gave away all his worldly possessions in the aftermath of a tragedy. He simply couldn't bear to be reminded of Tate or her unjust fate, and he later called his marriage to the actress the happiest I ever was in my life. Roman Polanski decided to direct the 1979 film Tess for an incredibly heartbreaking reason. This was the last novel Tate was reading before her death, and she suggested to Polanski that it would be great as a film. The dedication for the film states simply, "To Sharon." For exclusive perks like early access to new videos, priority replies to your comments, and to have your say on future content, consider becoming a Factornate member. On top of that, your support helps keep the channel going. Click the link in the description for more details. After her daughter's death, Tate's mother fought tirelessly for the rights and protection of victims. Even U.S. President George H.W. Bush recognized Doris Tate in 1992 for her work, though she died later that year. Patty Tate, Sharon's youngest sister, took up the fight after that, helping to found the Doris Tate Crime Victims Bureau. Sadly, Patty would pass away from cancer in 2000, leaving the middle sister Deborah to continue the work. The Tate sisters' father, Paul, never made public comments regarding his eldest daughter's death, but he was always there during the trial and subsequent parole hearings. No one in the family has ever forgotten Sharon's life and legacy. If you enjoyed this Factornate video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more incredible stories. Want to say in who we cover next? Join our membership program through the link in the description for exclusive perks. Your support means everything to us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.